It's Friday, everyone. What do we do on Fridays here at the Hint Hive? That's right, we smash the patriarchy. Hey, my beautiful humans. Welcome back to the Hint Hive, Amplifying Women's Voices. I'm your host, Kelly Hint, resident psychotherapist and feminist life coach, as well as your queen bee of this hive. Today, we are diving into a topic that is quietly shaking up the entire foundation of what society told women their lives were supposed to look like. We are talking about gray divorce after the age of 50, and why more women than ever are choosing themselves, even after decades of marriage. And I want you to really feel this with me for a second, because this topic is layered. It is emotional. It is complicated. And it's also deeply, unapologetically empowering. And let me tell you right now, this isn't a story about failure. This is a story about awakening. This is a story about women refusing to disappear inside lives that no longer fit them. So grab your favorite beverage and let's get into it. What is gray divorce, you may be asking yourself? Well, let's break it down. Gray divorce refers to couples over 50 ending their marriages, often after 20, 30, even 40 plus years together. We're talking about entire adult lifetimes built side by side, and then something shifts. And here's the kicker. The rate of gray divorce has doubled since the 1990s. According to research from the National Center for Family and Marriage Research, about 1 in 4 divorces today involve adults over 50. And for people over 65, divorce rate has tripled. Think about that for a second. This isn't rare. This isn't random. This is a full-on cultural shift. And this is where things get really interesting, because gray divorce is forcing us to question some of the biggest messages that society ever sold to women. We were taught that commitment meant staying no matter what. We were taught that being a good wife, a good mother, or a good partner often meant sacrificing pieces of ourselves for the greater good. We were taught that success looked like keeping the marriage intact, keeping the family together, and making it all look perfect from the outside. But more women are waking up and realizing that a successful life is not about appearance. It's about authenticity. It's about emotional safety. It's about fulfillment. And sometimes that means having the courage to admit that the life you built no longer reflects the woman you've become. So why are women initiating more divorces? Here's where it gets especially important for us as women. Research consistently shows that women initiate roughly 70% of divorces. And that percentage is even higher among college-educated women. So what's going on? Let's name it honestly. Women are more financially independent than previous generations. We have access to education, careers, and resources that our grandmothers didn't. We are less willing to tolerate emotional neglect, inequality, and invisible labor. We're living longer, which means staying unhappy for the rest of our lives suddenly feels like a very long time. And honestly, we are done shrinking ourselves to maintain a relationship that no longer fits. And let's go even deeper. A lot of women hit midlife and experience what I call a clarity surge. Kids are older or gone, caregiving roles shift, career identity stabilizes, and suddenly there's space, mental, emotional space, to ask the questions that were buried under survival mode for decades. Am I happy? Do I feel seen? Is this the life that I actually want? Gray divorce is often less about impulsivity and more about clarity. It is decades of unmet needs finally finding a voice. Now listen, just because something is empowering doesn't mean it's easy. Let's talk about the emotional reality of this without sugarcoating it. Gray divorce can come with grief over significantly lost time. Think about it. If you've spent decades with someone, the grief is going to be real. Then there's the fear of starting over, financial anxiety, identity confusion, like who am I outside of this marriage? Loneliness, especially if your social circle was tied to your partner. And let's not forget the social stigma, because society still loves to shame women who don't stick it out. And here's something I really want to normalize as a therapist. Grief in gray divorce is layered. You're not just grieving the relationship. You're grieving the version of yourself that existed within it, the future that you had imagined, the years that you invested. And at that exact same time, you might feel relief, freedom, lightness. And that emotional duality can feel confusing as hell. You can feel devastated and liberated. You can mourn the life you thought you'd have and feel excited about what's next. That emotional complexity, completely normal. In my coaching practice, I have actually worked with several women going through gray divorces. I felt so honored to be walking with them during such an incredibly complex time in their lives. I sat with them in their grief, their anger, their relief, their fear. But let me tell you, watching them become empowered and fearless in their new lives, that was pretty freaking cool. All right, now let's discuss this through the feminist lens. We cannot talk about gray divorce without talking about patriarchy. Many long-term marriages were built on outdated gender roles. Women doing the majority of unpaid labor, being the emotional managers of the entire household, some in their entire families. Women carrying the mental load, remembering everything, planning everything, anticipating everyone's needs. Women sacrificing careers, dreams, and identity for family stability. And for years, decades even, that imbalance was normalized. But something is shifting. Women are waking up and realizing, I have been overfunctioning in this relationship for years. And at some point, often in midlife, women ask, wait, when do I get to live my life? Gray divorce is often that moment of reckoning. And ladies, it's not selfish. It is self-honoring. So if you're considering or navigating gray divorce, let's talk about some action steps. Now, let me be clear for a moment to address the hate before it comes my way. I am not telling anyone to get a divorce. I am not encouraging divorce. Under most circumstances, I encourage couples to communicate their needs and expectations to one another. Maybe go to couples counseling or coaching before throwing in the towel. I am also aware, however, that these conversations may have already taken place over decades with no change on the behaviors causing distress. So this message is for my gals who are done being the only ones putting in the effort into their relationships. The ones who are tired of dealing with the same old with no change. All right, let's get practical because empowerment without action doesn't help anyone. First, get financially informed, not fearful. Knowledge is power. Understand your assets, debts, retirement accounts, pensions, and income streams. If you've been out of the workforce or less involved in finances, This step can feel incredibly intimidating, but it's essential. Consult a financial advisor or a divorce financial planner if possible. Fear thrives in the unknown, but clarity shrinks it. Next, build a support system and be intentional about it. You need people who see you. That might look like friends who can hold space without judgment, support groups specifically for divorce or midlife transitions, a therapist or coach. Hi, yes, highly recommended. And here's the key. Don't just surround yourself with people who tell you what you want to hear. Surround yourself with people who support your growth. Isolation will make everything heavier than it needs to be. All right, next, redefine your identity on purpose. You are not starting over. You are starting from experience. This is your chance to reconnect with yourself intentionally. Ask yourself, what do I actually enjoy? What have I been putting off for decades? What parts of myself have I silenced? Who am I when I'm not in survival mode? Try new things. Take classes. Travel solo. Say yes to curiosity. This is where reinvention begins. And of course, I have to throw in this step. Set boundaries like your peace depends on it, because it does. Whether it's with your ex, your kids, extended family, or judgmental outsiders, boundaries are your lifeline. And let me be clear, boundaries are not about controlling other people. They are about protecting your energy. You do not owe anyone an explanation for choosing your well-being. Another important step, don't rush the healing process. This is not a race. Grief does not follow a timeline, and neither does growth. There will be days that you feel powerful. There will be days where you feel like you're falling apart. Both are part of the process. Give yourself permission to be messy, uncertain, and human. And finally, rebuild your relationship with yourself. After decades of prioritizing others, many women feel disconnected from themselves. This is your opportunity to rebuild that relationship. Start small. Daily check-ins with yourself. Journaling. Asking, what do I need today? Self-trust is something that you can rebuild, and it becomes your strongest foundation moving forward. Now, let's talk about the reinvention era, aka your badass chapter. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. So many women report increased happiness and life satisfaction after leaving unfulfilling marriages. And no, that does not mean that it's easy, but it does mean that it can be worth it. We're talking about pursuing new careers or finally going after passion projects, traveling, sometimes for the first time independently, building deeper, more authentic friendships, exploring sexuality and identity without shame, creating homes that actually feel peaceful, and maybe, most importantly, feeling at home in yourself. This isn't the end of your story. It's the plot twist where you become the main character. All right, Queen Bees, time for our affirmation of the week. This week's affirmation is, I am allowed to outgrow the life I once fought to build. Think about it for a minute. I'm allowed to outgrow the life I once fought to build. Wow. Take a breath with that, because this one hits deep, especially for women who have spent years, even decades, investing in a life that no longer fits. And this does not just apply to gray divorce. Here's the truth. Just because you worked hard for something doesn't mean that you are obligated to stay in it forever. Growth requires change. And change sometimes requires letting go of identities, relationships, and roles that no longer align. Outgrowing something is not failure. It's evolution. It's a sign that you are still growing, still becoming, still refusing to settle. And choosing yourself after decades of choosing everyone else, that's not selfish. That is powerful. That is revolutionary. Gray divorce is not just about endings. It's about reclaiming your voice, reclaiming your time, reclaiming your identity, reclaiming your future. And yes, it's scary. But so is staying stuck in a life that no longer feels like yours. So is silencing your needs for another 10, 20, or 30 years. So is waking up one day and realizing that you never gave yourself permission to fully live. You do not need permission to change your life. You just need the courage to listen to the part of you that has been whispering, there has to be more than this. And then you take one step toward that more. Ladies, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a woman in your life who might need to hear this message right now. Send it to your friend, your sister, your mom, because these are conversations that we need to normalize. And if you're navigating something like this yourself, come join our community over on Facebook, because you do not have to do this alone. And of course, if you need a bit more help, reach out to me and we'll do this work together. Because you deserve support. You deserve clarity. You deserve to feel empowered in your choices. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and follow the Hint Hive so we can keep amplifying women's voices. Loud, unapologetic, and powerful as hell. Until next time, stay fierce, stay evolving, and never, ever shrink yourself to fit into a life that you have outgrown. This podcast is powered by Kelly Hint Empowerment Coaching, as well as Kelly M. Hint LMHC and The Cranky Counselor. To find out more about coaching services, head over to CoachKellyHint.com. If you'd like to know more about the psychotherapy services I offer to individuals within the state of New York, you can check out KellyMHint.com. And if you'd like to learn more about aromatherapy, you can check out TheCrankyCounselor.com.